The speaker had no hesitation at all. American Idol over Dancing with the Stars. Congressman Paul, BlackBerry or iPhone?
BlackBerry.
BlackBerry it is. All right, we're going to continue our conversation now. We want to bring up a very important issue you know all of you will want to weigh in on, and that is the debate about entitlements. Mr. Kane mentioned those, and specifically Medicare. Right now, I want to go down to our audience. We've got Josh McKelvin with a question.
Thanks very much, John. And I have Dr. Paul Collins, who you've been running a family practice in Manchester for how long?
27 years.
Nice work. So not surprising your question is related to health care. What's your question, sir?
Yes, sir. As a member of the baby boomer generation, I've been contributing to Medicare through payroll taxes for over 30 years. How do you propose to keep Medicare financially solvent for the next 50 years and beyond?
Let's start with Dr. Paul on this one.
Well, under today's conditions, it's not solvent and won't be solvent. You know, if you're an average couple and you paid your entire amount into Medicare, you would have put $140,000 into it. And in your lifetime, you will take out more than 3 times that much. So a little bit of arithmetic tells you it's not solvent. So we're up against the wall on that. So it can't be made solvent. It has to change. We have to have more competition in medicine. And I would think that if we don't want to cut any of the medical benefits for children or the elderly, because we have drawn so many in and got them so dependent on the government, if you want to work a transition, you have to cut a lot of money. And that's why I argue the case that this money ought to be cut out of foreign welfare and foreign militarism and corporate welfare and the military-industrial complex. Then we might have enough money to tide people over. But some revamping has to occur. What we need is competition. We need to get a chance for the people to opt out of the system. Just to talk about opting out of Obamacare, why can't we opt out of the whole system and take care of ourselves?
All right, let's continue the conversation. Governor Pawlenty. Congressman Paul says opt out. Congressman Ryan says squeeze a lot of savings across the federal budget, including a lot out of Medicare, to turn it into, and he doesn't like this word, but turn it essentially into a voucher program. Instead of having the federal program, the government would give you some money and you'd go out in the marketplace and shop for it. Is that the right way to do it?
Let me first address the doctor. Doctor, you said in your question that you paid in your whole life, and we respect that. People have made plans, particularly people who are on the program now or close to eligibility. We should keep our word to people that we've made promises to. So under my proposal, if you're on the program or near the program, we'll keep our word. But we also have to recognize what Congressman Paul just said. There was a recent report out that the premiums for Medicare and the payroll withholdings are only paying about half the program. So it is not financially solvent. We have to fix it. We have to reform it. I'm going to have my own plan, John, that will feature some differences from Congressman Ryan's plan. It'll feature performance pay rather than just volume pay to hospitals and clinics and providers. It will allow Medicare to continue as an option, but it'll be priced against various other options that we're going to offer people as well, and some other things. And I also said, if it was a choice between Barack Obama's plan of doing nothing, we have a president of the United States, got one of the worst crises financially in the history of the country, and you can't find him on these issues. He's missing. I'll lead on this issue.
All right, Governor. Mr. Speaker, I want to bring you into this conversation because I'm looking down. I want to get the words just right. Your initial reaction to the Ryan plan was a radical right-wing social engineering. Then you backtrack. Why?
Well, first of all, there was a very narrow question which said, should Republicans impose an unpopular bill on the American people? Now, I supported the Ryan budget as a general proposal. I actually wrote a newsletter supporting the Ryan budget. And those words were taken totally out of context. I'm happy to repeat them. If you're dealing with something as big as Medicare and you can't have a conversation with the country where the country thinks what you're doing is the right thing, you better slow down. Remember, we all got mad at Obama because he ran over us when we said don't do it. Well, the Republicans ought to follow the same ground rule. If you can't convince the American people it's a good idea, maybe it's not a good idea. So let me start with there. Second, there are certain things I would do different than Paul Ryan on Medicare. I agree strongly with him on Medicaid. I think it could be done. But let me just say 2 quick things.
Quickly.
Congressman Tom Price has a very good bill in that would allow private contracting, so those people who want to voluntarily could contract with their doctor or their hospital in addition to Medicare, and it would be outside the current system, and it would relieve the pricing pressure on the current system. We did a study called Stop Paying the Crooks. We think you can save $70 to $120 billion in Medicare and Medicaid annually by not paying crooks.
All right, we have to save time. We have to save time. Let me start with the senator first. Should the Republicans slow down?
No, we have a $1.4 trillion deficit, and it isn't getting any better anytime soon. We have to deal with this problem now, and what Paul Ryan has suggested, which I wholeheartedly support, is to use a program that is identical to what seniors already have. It's called Medicare Part D. They have a program right now, which seniors like. It is a program that's called a premium support program. We give seniors, depending on income, a certain amount of money so they can go out and they can purchase health care that they want that helps them. And this is the key, John. We need to include seniors in controlling costs. What President Obama, let me finish, please. What President Obama has done is he put in the Obamacare bill, the Independent Payment Advisory Board. Ladies and gentlemen, seniors, Medicare is going to be cut starting in 2014 by the federal government, and it's going to be rationing of care from the top down. What Paul Ryan and Rick Santorum want to do, which is not radical, which is take a program, Medicare prescription drugs, that is 41% under budget because seniors are involved in controlling costs and apply it all to Medicare. It is the right approach for Medicare.
The Speaker's point, Mr. Kaine, was that if you've lost the American people, if they're not following you, you have to slow down until you can get them with you. Is that a fair point?
We don't need to slow down. I hate to tell you, I hate to be the one to give you the bad news, doctor. You're not going to get most of the money you put into Medicare if we don't restructure it. The reason we are in the situation we are today with Medicare and Social Security is because the problem hadn't been solved. We can no longer rearrange it. We've got to restructure those programs, and the Paul Ryan approach, I totally support. And he has been very courageous in taking the lead on this. And you know that commercial where they have demagogued the whole thing with Medicare and having grandma tossed off the bridge? If we don't fix this problem, it's going to be our grandkids in that wheelchair that they're going to be throwing off the bridge. We have got to fix the problem.
Let's continue the conversation on entitlements. I know Mr. Congressman Bachman wants to get in. Others want to get in. Let's go down to John DeStace on the floor.
Thank you, John. Mr. Kaine, back to you. And while you're kind of fired up there, let's turn to Social Security. Could you be specific regarding ages, income levels? Everyone talks about reform. What is your specific Social Security reform plan in regard to raising the retirement age, at what ages, cutting benefits, and at what income level means testing kicking in? Thank you.
Let's fix the problem, and that is to restructure Social Security. I support a personal retirement account option in order to phase off the current system. We know that this works. It worked in the small country of Chile when they did it 30 years ago. Their payroll tax had gotten up to 27% for every dollar that the worker made. I believe we can do the same thing. That break point would be approximately 40 years of age. Now, young people realize they still got to contribute to the current system for those people that are on Social Security, that are near Social Security.
Retirement age going to be raised? Are you going to raise the retirement age as President of the United States?
I don't have to raise the retirement age because that by itself isn't going to solve the problem. If Congress decides to do that, that's a different matter. Let me give you one other example where this approach has worked. The city of Galveston, they opted out of the Social Security system way back in the 70s. And now they retire with a whole lot more money. Why? For a real simple reason. They have an account with their money on it. What I'm simply saying is we've got to restructure the program using a personal retirement account option in order to eventually make it solvent.
All right, we're going to keep the conversation moving. I know people want to weigh in. You'll get a chance to weigh in. Let's move down to Jennifer's on the floor with the question.
John, thank you very much. Governor Romney, I'd like to ask this to you first, please. The Treasury Department says the United States will hit its credit limit on August the 2nd. Do you believe we will ultimately have to raise the debt ceiling?
I believe we will not raise the debt ceiling unless the president finally is willing to be a leader on issues that the American people care about. And the number one issue that relates to that debt ceiling is whether the government is going to keep on spending money they don't have. And the American people and Congress and every person elected in Washington has to understand we want to see a president finally lay out plans for reining in the excesses of government. You've heard on here a whole series of ideas about entitlements, and that's about 60% of federal spending. That's a big piece. That's a big chunk. Ideas from all these people up here. Where are the president's ideas? Each person has different ideas here. We can try them and try different ideas in different states and different programs at the federal level, but why isn't the president leading? He isn't leading on balancing our budget, and he's not leading on jobs. He's failed the American people both in job creation and in the scale of government, and that's why he's not going to be reelected.
Governor, what happens if you don't raise it? What happens then? Is it okay not to?
Well, what happens if we continue to spend time and time again, year and year again, more money than we take in? What we say to America is, at some point you hit a wall. At some point, people around the world say, I'm not going to keep loaning money to America to pay these massive deficits, pay for them, because America can't pay them back, and the dollar's not worth anything anymore. In that circumstance, we've settled our future, the future for our kids in a way that is just unacceptable. And so you're going to see Republicans stand up and say, Mr. President, lay down plans to balance this budget. If he does so, if we get Democrats to come to the table and honestly deal with the challenges we have, with the entitlement challenges, with the spending and discretionary accounts, with our jobs issues, and finally say, you know what, we really can't afford another $1 trillion of Obamacare. If he'll be honest about these things, then I think you'll see the kind of progress you'd hope to see.
Congresswoman Bachmann, you'll get a vote on this issue. What Governor Romney outlines is the goal of Republicans. Let's get a big deal to balance the budget. If you can't get that in the short term, as this date approaches, and those negotiations are continuing, what is your price tag? What is your price tag in at least a first wave of cuts? And if you don't get it, would you say to the House Republicans, no, let the government go into default? That's where we need to stand.
I've already voted no on raising the debt ceiling in the past, and unless there are serious cuts, I can't. But I want to speak of someone who's far more eloquent than I, someone who said just dealing with the issue of raising the debt ceiling is a failure of leadership. And that person was then Senator Barack Obama. He refused to raise the debt ceiling because he said President Bush had failed in leadership. Clearly, President Obama has failed in leadership. Under his watch, in 2.5 years, we've increased the federal debt 35% just in that amount of time. So what we need to do, both from the Congress and from the President, he needs to direct his Treasury Secretary, pay the interest on the debt first, then we won't have a failure of our full faith and credit from their prioritized spending. We have to have serious spending cuts.
Okay, appreciate that. Again, I want to ask the candidates just a little bit shorter in those answers so we can keep the voters involved. Let's go down to Josh on the floor.
Thank you, John. And I'm joined by Jared Kinney, who runs a juvenile arrest unit out of Massachusetts. And I'm told that has nothing to do with your question.
Correct. I was wondering what your definition of the separation of church and state is and how it will affect your decision making.
Governor Pawlenty, why don't you take that one first?
Well, the protections between the separation of church and state were designed to protect people of faith from government, not government from people of faith. And this is a country that in our founding documents says we're a nation that's founded under God, and the privileges and blessings that we have are from our Creator. They're not from our member of Congress. They're not from our county commissioner. And 49 of the 50 states have, in the very early phrases of their constitutions, language like Minnesota has in its preamble. It says this: we, the people of Minnesota, grateful to God for our civil and religious liberties. And so the founding fathers understood that the blessings that we have as a nation come from our Creator, and we should stop and say thanks and express gratitude for that. And I embrace that.
Let's spend a little time talking. Let's spend a little bit of time talking about it. Senator, let me start with you. Just what role does faith play in your political life? Are there decisions, certain issues where some you might just, let's meet with my advisors, what does my gut say, and others where you might retreat and have a moment of private prayer?
I'm someone who believes that you approach issues using faith and reason. And if your faith is pure and your reason is right, they'll end up in the same place. I think the key to the success of this country, how we all live together, because we are a very diverse country. Madison called it the perfect remedy, which was to allow everybody, people of faith and no faith, to come in and make their claims in the public square, to be heard, have those arguments, and not to say, because you're a person of faith, you need to stay out. Because you have strong faith convictions, your opinion is invalid. Just the opposite. We get along because we know that all of our ideas are allowed in and are tolerated. That's what makes America work.